Okay, let's go ahead and get started on 10.3. And this is really dealing with multiplying polynomials. So in the last lesson, we learned to multiply monomials by polynomials. Now we're multiplying polynomials by polynomials. And so notice we're going to go over the FOIL method, which you should already know. FOIL method is first, outer, inner, last. You can see by the first letter of each one that spells out FOIL. And what FOIL means is we're going to multiply the first terms of both polynomials. So we're going to multiply those two first. So 4x times 6x is 24, because 4 times 6 is 24. And then x squared. And if you remember from previous work, we have x times x, which is really x to the first times x to the first, which is x to the second. We add those powers. Outer means that we look at the outer terms of the entire thing. So that would be the 4x and the 3 plus 3. We're going to multiply those together. We get 12 from 4 times 3. Notice one of them has an x, the other one doesn't. So we just have x. Then we're going to multiply the inner. Inner are these two values here. That is 1 times 6, which is 6. And then we have an x. And then finally, we multiply the last values, which are these two numbers right here. 1 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And then what we have to do is we have to combine all of our like terms. So we go in here now and do 24x squared plus 18x, because 12 plus 6 is 18. And remember, when we add, we can only do it if they both have an x, and they can only have an x. And that's it if we are going to combine them together. And then plus 3. And that would be my answer. Okay, so now we're going to learn the box method. So now we have the FOIL method. Now we're going to learn the box method. So the box method just says we're going to create a box. So here we have a box. We're going to count how many terms there are here. Notice in this first polynomial, we have 2 terms. In this second polynomial, we have 2 terms. So we're going to make it a 2 by 2 box. 2 rows for this one, 2 columns for this one, or 2 columns for this one and 2 rows for this one. It doesn't matter which way you do it. Just set it up that way. So we have 5r plus 7 and 5r minus 7. We're then going to multiply. Notice here this column and this row intersect right here. So we have 5r times 5r. 5 times 5 is 25. R times R is R squared because we add the powers. We have negative 7 times 5R, which is negative 35R. That's for this box, right? 5R, negative 7. This one we have 5R plus 7, so that's positive 35R. And then 7 right here, 7 intersects with negative 7, so we multiply those two, we get negative 49. So based on that, we now have 25r squared. Now what we're going to do next is we are going to add up the diagonals. So notice I drew diagonals there. They have to be drawn that direction, not the other direction. And when I draw those diagonals there, we have 25r squared, and we add up the diagonals. So we're adding those diagonals. 35r minus 35r is 0, so those cancel each other. And we finally have negative 49. That's my answer. And notice here that in the diagonals, you should have like terms along the diagonals. If you don't, you did something wrong. So you can always look at that and say, okay, did I do this correctly, by checking those diagonals and making sure that those were okay. Okay, let's do one more. So here we have 3c plus 4d squared. So on this one, we cannot distribute the squared through. Notice that we did this before. We had, let's say, 2x squared y cubed, and we'll do it to the third power. So when we had something like this, we would distribute the power. So we would do 2 to the third, x to the sixth, because it's 2 times 3, and y to the ninth, because 3 times 3 is 9. And then 2 to the third would just be 8. So this would just be 8. 2 times 2 times 2. So that would be our answer. So we could distribute that through. However, when we have a plus or a minus in here, we cannot distribute that. And I'm going to explain that a little bit later on. You'll see why we can't do that. So this becomes 3c plus 4d times itself. So now we can do either the FOIL method or the box method. I'm going to go ahead and do the FOIL method. So 3c times 3c is 3c squared. 3c times 4d is 12cd, right? 3 times 4 is 12, and then c times d is just cd. And then on this bottom one, we have 4d times 3c. That's also 12. And I'm going to write it as cd. You could write it as dc. It still would be like terms with this. And then finally, we have 16d squared. That would be our 4d times itself, which is 4d times 4d. 16, 4 times 4 is 16, and d times d is d squared. We have these two that add together, so we have 9c squared plus 24cd plus 16d squared. And that would be our answer. And we're done with this video. We will finish up the rest of this lesson in the next video.